You ready? Okay. We have everyone. Kim? All right. Yep. All right. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the August 8th, 2023 Village Council regular meeting to order. I show the time at 6:03 p.m. I show we have full quorum with 2 members participating Zoom. I don't see Andrew, though. Andy, is he? He's there? Okay. That said, I need a motion to consider allowing council members to participate.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up, I have adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes?
Yes, we do. First change is to remove item number 3 under consent agenda. Consider appointment of John Jones to the planning board for an unexpired term, expiring 3/1/26, and add it to new business number 1. Discuss and consider appointment of applicant to the planning board for unexpired term expiring 3/1/2026. And then item K, closed session, to remove closed session.
All right, we won't be having a closed session?
No,
Okay. Anything else?
that'll do it.
Any other changes from council abroad? Hearing none, I'll need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up, we have Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
flag of the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, and justice for all.
For those that are, Andy and, do we have their microphones on? I'm getting feedback from someone. Andy, okay, Andy, if you don't mind shutting your mic off until there you go, got it. All right, we're getting a lot of feedback. All right, first up, we have public comment period. I'm sure we have a few people that will be coming up to speak. When you do come up to speak, please state your name, address, and we give you 3 minutes. Jamie, you want a time?
Got it.
3 minutes to speak.
Really fast, this is the general public comment period. If you're here to speak on either of the public hearings, you'll do so when we get to the public hearings on the agenda. This is just general comments.
So general comments. So the public hearings, if you're here for the, as he said, the public hearing, we'll have time for you guys to speak on that behalf. So anyone here to talk about anything else other than public hearing?
I have no one signed up.
No one signed up, okay. That being said, we're going to move on into presentations, reports and updates. Manager's report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I had a couple of questions for you all, mainly involving the event planning expectations. As you recall, a part of our budgetary process in the fiscal year 23-24 was a result of hiring Tyler, who's our recreation activities coordinator. Since that time, he has brought forth several ideas for events, been tasked with managing the Marvin Day, a couple of other events you all had decided that you wanted to pursue, barbecue and brews, or I can't remember exactly what we called it, and then the Easter egg hunt. We've since taken some of these ideas back to PRGs just to kind of let them know and to gather some input from them. I wanted to kind of get expectations from you all, because in the past, PRG has been involved in kind of creating events, managing them, and planning them. And we've gotten to a point now where we have a dedicated staff member. I'm not so sure that you all want us to continue to go back to PRG and ask for direction and consideration of, you know, some of the things that we're going to add to these events. And we're trying to streamline our process on making decisions for events and the details that goes along with that. So I just wanted to get some input from you all as to your expectations of what involvement PRG should have in event planning moving forward, since we have dedicated staff now for that.
they've been pretty active in the past, or are they reluctant to do this, or are they just asking how much do we want the
The-
expectation to be?
PRG is not asking any questions, it's really just me. And is Mayor Pro Tem online yet, or no?
I am, but yeah, that's not entirely accurate. They are asking questions. Tyler brought up, the Easter egg hunt along with the barbecue and bourbon event that we wanted to do for some of our, adult, residents. And they were concerned that if we start adding too many events, that it's really gonna pull them too tight. I tried to explain to them that we hired Tyler specifically for event planning, and, that we weren't asking Park Rec and Greenway Board for any additional time outside of their board meetings. If they would like to volunteer, we would gladly welcome that. But I think that they are concerned if we start putting too much on their plate, that they're just gonna have too much to do and too many additional events, above and beyond what we already have. So I tried to explain to them that we are looking for, their feedback, but at the end of the day, like, we've decided that we wanted to add 2 additional events, to our calendar, for our residents, and that we were gonna direct Tyler to kind of keep moving down that road, and we would take any help from them that we could. But I think that there was some concern that there were gonna be too many events for them to have to do either in the evenings or on the weekends. So I think that's just kind of where Christina's trying to get some direction.
So, and I will say, thank you for that, Mayor Pro Tem. I will say that in the past, PRG has expressed concern over event planning, and this was primarily with Marvin Day. It was just a lot. Our very first Marvin Day, it was a lot on them, it was a lot on us, and I think that they were a little overwhelmed by Marvin Day, so I think some of them got a little discouraged by the amount of involvement that we kind of expected out of them. At this point, at the management level, we feel like this is event planning and event details is something we can handle in-house with direction of council, and updating the PRG board when they have meetings, but not necessarily asking them to be directly involved unless they obviously want to volunteer. We don't want to put any more burden on them for events than we feel is relevant. And now that we've got dedicated staff for the planning purposes, we feel like it's something that we can do. I do, and Mayor Pro Tem can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do feel like that probably the PRG board kind of agrees with that thought process of let staff handle things. We'll come to them and just give them updates. If there's anything that they see that's kind of red flags that we need to bring back to you all, then we'll be more than welcome to do so. But we at a staff level just didn't want to get to having to take things back and forth to different boards. It's just kind of counterproductive and time consuming. So we just need direction from you all as to your expectations on what you want as their involvement and our involvement. So if y'all are okay with staff handling things and just updating PRG, I'll express that to them at their next meeting, make sure they're okay with it, and we can roll with it from that standpoint.
I think you're on the right path.
Yeah, I'm with that.
That's where I'm at as well. And the only thing I would say, Tyler, if there's a way to start networking a go-to list of volunteers when we do have events, so we're not scrambling for each volunteer, be nice to pull from that pool of people that maybe have a sign-up or something like that, because that seems to be, when they're overwhelmed, is because we have maybe not enough volunteers. But that would be nice to have. We put it on a flyer or some sort of information that Austin could put out, sign up here to become a Marvin volunteer and, be called on. So you have at least a list to go out to. But yeah, I agree with that. Comments from Mayor Pro Tem or Andy?
Just from my standpoint, PRG is an advisory board, and their role is to advise us as to their experience and such. I think that we historically have put a little bit more burden on them than what their designation was essentially for. So having it go in-house to a professional planner for these events is certainly the way to go.
Is there any opposition to that thought process at all? Okay, well, I'll if there's kind of a consensus of thought, what I'll do is I'll provide that comment back to PRG at their next meeting, or I'll get Tyler to do so, And if I need to discuss anything further, I'll advise you then.
Okay. Anything else?
I can move on to the GEO bond update, if
Yes,
if y'all are good
please.
with that. As you all know, and residents sitting here tonight, the council has decided to put a referendum, 2 referendums on the ballot for March elections. 2 of those referendums involve the obtainment of GEO bonds for road, transportation, and parks purposes. The road GEO bond still has a lot of unknowns that we would like to get addressed from you all. I'd asked Austin to send a special meeting request to you all. It looks like maybe the end of August, beginning of September may work for a special meeting. Primarily, the comments that I really need to get addressed from you all are private roads, how we want to handle private roads in the event that those residents in private roads want us to take over. If you recall in the past, we've presented to you all some statutory regulations that would allow us to do assessments on private roads if a private road wanted to come in and we wanted to pave their road. Y'all have opposed those requests in the past. I'm not sure if that same thought process is where you want to go if the GEO bond passes, but we would like to get some direction from you all as to your recommendations on that so that we can communicate that properly to the public. The second thing that we wanted to mention to you all, and I'm just telling you this, food for thought. We'll discuss all these things at a special meeting, but the second thing is the potential for a traffic mitigation fund. As you all know, we have several HOAs that come to us throughout the year and request speed humps, stop signs, speed bumps, speed tables, all that stuff. And our traffic mitigation policy that we have in place right now basically dictates if the HOA wants to do it, they can request it, and we would go out and do a study, an engineered study, and if we see that it's going to work, we will allow that to happen on our roads if the HOA pays for said device. Last we checked, speed tables were around $5,000 per table, and that would be something that would be borne to the HOA per our current policy today. One of the things we wanted to mention to you all is if we do the GEO bond and it passes, to start some type of traffic mitigation fund where we have set amount of funds that we put in there every year, and we would do an application process to where people could apply to that fund, and then we would, choose if we're going to put that traffic mitigation calming policy or device in place. So we can talk about that more in detail. That's just food for thought. And then we wanted to talk about 2 other things, specific amenities that would evolve into the multi-use space that we're proposing next door to us, what that entails. Does it entail, there's all kinds of amenities that we've identified in the master plan. So we wanted to speak about specific amenities that you all would entertain as possibilities, again, so we can educate the public as to what possibilities would be out there if the GEO bond passes. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is non-Marvin roads. There's several sections of road within Waxhaw Marvin and also Marvin School Road that is in Marvin and not in Marvin, not in Marvin. Primarily, I'm not sure what the neighborhood is across the street from us. Hunter may be able to interrupt me and tell me. That property is not in Marvin, so therefore the road to the center line is in unincorporated Union County and then Marvin. Unfortunately, the way the PAL bill funds work is we can't spend PAL bill dollars on non-Marvin roads. So we would have to figure out an internal allocation of how we're going to bill general fund for non-Marvin roads if we were to take over roads that were in Marvin, not in Marvin, in Marvin, not in Marvin. So we're going to have to figure that out and hash that out. I'm meeting with DOT tomorrow morning to go over what they're willing to relinquish and what they're not. So I'll have some better direction from them. But those are just a couple of things that we definitely need to talk about and try to get answered for a special meeting. So that's the update there. Any questions?
So you have, it's just said end of August is Labor Day and early September is Labor Day. So we looking at early in the week or late in the week?
Yeah,
planning
Austin sent an
purposes?
email, so if y'all, I know that we've had one council member follow up with him already. If y'all just want to follow up with him via email and give him potential dates, he provided 2 dates. I know those 2 dates did not work, so we can actually, Austin, I'll actually give him some more dates and I'll reissue an email to you all and then we can go from there.
Okay.
Are there any questions on any of that? And that was a lot.
No, that just means check your emails, people, because I'm the only one that answered her, so check your emails.
We always get scolded from.
Any questions
She's usually
on
right there
those
kicking.
those items at all?
I would say only the item about where the center line
Yeah.
piece, I would just look for precedent somewhere else, because this isn't the first time
Yeah.
that's happening. Let's just look for precedent there.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay.
I mean, we can definitely come up with some type of allocation plan. It's going to be a decision y'all have to make. It's a funding decision.
Okay,
That's all I have.
all right, thank you. Next up, we have planners report.
So I just have two things to update you guys on. First one is the Belgrove closeout. We have received all final encroachments and all inspections have been completed and signed off on, so that will be on your guys' September agenda. We're just working on kind of one last thing with, guarantee for the road, warranty. I've discussed that with our engineer, but just wanted to give you guys that heads up. So if you have any questions or, hear anything from any residents out there, just let me know. But they will be, it will be on your September agenda for road acceptance and bond release. The second one is just the Marvin Development Ordinance update. So Planning Board has been, we have made a lot of progress with the project. We are getting into the meats and bones of the kind of regulations, starting here at this next meeting in August. I do encourage council to either, once again, start attending or to watch the meetings online. I've got all these sections of the ordinances that we reviewed, and be happy to go over them with you. And probably during the August work session, we will want to schedule a joint meeting with Planning Board. I'll consult with them at their meeting this month on kind of some tentative dates, or / we'll just, if council's open to it, we'll just do it during Planning Board's regular scheduled date and just have you guys, and we'll just amend your guys' schedule. Any questions? That's all I got.
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilman Wortman, any questions? All right, thank you, Hunter. All right, next up, roads report. Back to you.
Yeah, most of that was covered in the GEO bond update, but additionally, there's an item on your agenda for Fog Seal, and we'll get to that when we get to it.
And for those who missed it, can you remind the latest on what's happening up here at the roundabout?
Yes.
Just since we have probably one of the largest audiences that we've had in some time, so welcome, by the way.
Yeah, so it's a DOT project. There's a lot of unknowns of when the project's going to start back in terms of construction. They are currently under contract to start construction. However, there were a portion of the utilities, the wet utilities, i.e. sewer, to be installed. The conduit was put into place about 2 weeks ago, and that's why you saw a temporary closure during that time. They've opened it back up, and they're working on some additional stuff that doesn't involve right-of-way closure, road closure. And in the next couple of weeks, they will close the road again, and that will be when it's closed pretty much permanently until the construction is finished, and it opens back up. Construction, don't quote me on this, but I think it's supposed to last 56 days. So around 2 months, you'll see that road closed, obviously contingent upon weather, and then it'll be opened back up when the roundabout's complete. They are supposed to provide us a week notice before they actually close the road. So when that road closes, or when that announcement is made, we will in turn pass that message along to you all.
Thank you. So if you're not on our email list, please get on that. We'll let you know. They're timing it just in time for school opening, so I'm sure pay attention to what the school's going to be asking you to do, possibly something different there with the buses.
So I will say DOT has notified the school system, so that should be in their transportation plans. And for those of you listening, and those of you here tonight, the process will go into September, possibly November. So it'll be well within the school system calendar, unfortunately, at this point.
Yeah, and just for the record, it's truly their baby. It's NCDOT, it's a state issue. We didn't even know it was going to be opened, or closed down, then opened up again, and then soon to be closed down again. So we're getting information fairly recently, so. But just wanted to let you all know because it probably affects most of you that are here. Next up, deputies report. Thank you, Christina. There you are, Ed.
I mean, it's pretty much the same as the last report. I mean, the traffic is down a little bit, but I think that's probably because school's closed right now. We're still running about a little under 500,000 cars every month on both roads.
Every month.
Well, quarter, no, it's about 200,000, close to 200,000. Or between the two signs, it's about $250,000. But I think during the school year, it's like $500,000 per month that travel between the two signs. And that's one way. But other than that,
That pie chart doesn't seem to change much.
no. I mean, the speeds are a little, I didn't even look at the max speed. That's gone down, 175. Yeah, they're both 75, so at least they're not 90-something again.
Progress.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Ed. Next up, we have Planning Board report.
I wasn't able to attend specifically that meeting, but I can go over it and basically say that the three of the things on there of the four that I'm going to mention, we're going to discuss tonight. But one is the discussion of the minor subdivision final plat for 9803 Chestnut Road. The discussion of Sage at Marvin preliminary plat and construction plans is what they went over. And also the design review board to review the monument signage for the Sage at Marvin. And of course, the other one was the discussion and recommendation of CZ 2023-1, which was the ZEPSA rezoning submittal. And then it recessed for the Marvin development ordinance.
Okay. Any questions for Bob? All right, moving on. PR&G Board report. Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The board discussed the Marvin Gardens Pocket Park again. And I think where we have finally landed is they are going to work on talking with Marsh and getting some of their native trees and some plants, so that we can basically just have, you know, a manicured natural area. We talked to Matt in depth about trying to clean it up some, because right now they're ruining mower blades every time they go over there to try to mow. So we're gonna do some manicured area, but then we're really gonna try to heavily mulch and put in some native trees and plants that can deal with the soil and not having water, since putting in a well there is extremely expensive. So we should see that kind of start to come to fruition in the fall when we get those plants from Marsh. And then we already kind of talked about the events and where Park Trip and Greenway landed on kind of their feelings of we may be doing too many events now. But I think the board agrees with me on kind of, we've hired Tyler for a reason. Tyler's going to handle it. So we're all in agreement on that. And that was it. It was a light meeting.
Okay, any questions for Mayor Pro Tem? That said, we'll move on to event planning report. Is that you, Tyler?
Yeah, so let me turn that over. So thanks to everybody that was able to come out, the National Night Out. Right now, we're looking forward to our trick-or-treat event, October 27th, Friday. That's what's coming up. We're also already working hard on Marvin Day 2024, checking those boxes off. Yeah, thanks. That's about it.
Okay, any questions for Tyler? All right, thank you. All right, next up we have consent agenda. We had an amended, removed one, so I need to get approval of consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. On to public hearings. All right. First one, we have,
Mr. Mayor, can I?
yes,
Okay.
go ahead.
Before we open the public hearing for rezoning application for the 1.5 acre parcel located at 9908 Newtown Road, I want to thank all of those that submitted public comments last night and this morning. Staff has forwarded all public comments received to council. All comments have been received and read prior to this hearing and will be entered into the minutes. These comments will be considered as part of the rezoning request. We appreciate everyone attending to provide comments for this rezoning hearing and are limiting comments to one group representative. When called, please provide one or three group representatives to speak for all or against the request. In addition, a general reminder that we represent residents that reside within the village limits. Any citizen or representative that wishes to speak is welcome to provide comment. However, please keep in mind, if you are not a Village of Marvin resident and/or your property does not directly abut the property in question, your comments and opinions may not be considered. I also just want to add to that, to this, that we have read through all the comments and concerns, and we'll say that there are concerns. Some of those are concerns that we've had and continue to have, and we'll address as they go along. So just please know that this is not just something that y'all have identified and we're sitting back and not taking notice of it. So, but we do appreciate everyone's concerns and everyone's ideas. It's great to see that everyone's coming out and attending this. So, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Jamie. And so I'll go ahead and open the public hearing to consider the adoption of an ordinance for conditional rezoning application CZ 2023-1 to rezone the 1.51 acres located at 9908 Newtown Road from R Marvin Residential to Marvin Heritage District Commercial only. And I need a motion to open the hearing.
So moved.
All is in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Motion passes. We're going to start with Hunter first, and then we'll get into public comment if there is any.
Yeah, so before we open it up for public comment, I will go over kind of a presentation, kind of going over the submittal itself, just so, you know, kind of get background, make sure everybody's on the same page. And then we'll open it up for the public to comment on their submittal. So the village has received a rezoning application to rezone the property located at 9908 Newtown Road from the R Marvin Residential District to the Marvin Heritage District Commercial Only District. The applicant for the rezoning is Zepsa Capital LLC. The property owner is 9908 Newtown LLC, which is also still, that LLC is still managed and owned by the Zepsa family. As mentioned, this request is to rezone the 1.518 acres from our residential to the Marvin Heritage District Commercial only. So kind of getting into the submittal itself, this the proposed project would basically be adding 23,000 square feet in totality of commercial retail office space. The proposal is to restore and retain the existing home that's on the site and convert it into a restaurant with the addition of a commercial kitchen at the rear of that building. They're also proposing 2 additional commercial mixed-use retail buildings, one being, they're both 5,000 square foot footprint, 2 stories, so they're 10,000 square foot in total. So the total proposal is adding an additional 21,550 square feet to the site. The proposed elevations for the site is that they are restoring the existing home. The commercial kitchen will be attached to the back of the existing home. And these are just some elevations that are submitted, part of their proposal. Building 2 will have the kind of a farm type barn aesthetic. And this is that middle building behind the restaurant or the existing home and commercial kitchen. And then this is the proposed elevations for building 3. So getting into the surrounding land use and zoning, the current property is vacant / there is an existing residential structure on it. To the north is residential or common open space to preserve at Marvin. To the south, it's vacant / agriculture. It's deemed the Fincher property. And to the east is vacant / it's the Crane Store property. All those properties are zoned R Marvin Residential. And to the west is the Wedding United Methodist Church. The small area plan for the Marvin Heritage District does have this property identified for a future land use designation for commercial only. Okay, kind of getting into a brief staff analysis is, so the proposal regarding with tree preservation, the applicant is proposing to disturb as little as possible and save the larger canopy trees on the site where possible. The details of the tree preservation and mitigation plan are not necessarily required during this, the rezoning hearing. If approved, they would be required and be reviewed as part of the preliminary plat and construction document phase. For the buffer, they're proposing a 20-foot rear buffer at the property, at the rear of the property that abuts the Preserve at Marvin common open space, as well as doing a 6-foot high solid opaque fence and a row of evergreen plantings. One of the bottom picture there is kind of a illustration of what that proposal will look like. This will be coupled with the 30-foot common open space from the Preserve at Marvin, totaling a total of a 50-foot vegetative rear buffer. The planted evergreens will be a minimum of 6 feet at the time of installation, and the actual location of plantings will be field located and identified on their landscape plans if approved. Additionally, they are proposing a 5-foot landscape buffer on the side of the properties with some evergreen screening to accompany some of the existing evergreen screening on the side of Weddington Methodist Church. Open space, the applicant's proposing 28.26% of landscape and buffering, as well as an additional 11.87% of pedestrian-oriented hardscape and outdoor amenity space. This totals 41.13% of reserved open space for the development. That exceeds the minimum of 30% per the ordinance. Parking, the proposed development has 53 parking spots with an additional of 4 ADA accessible spots, totaling 57. That's roughly 1 spot for every 412 square foot of commercial retail office space. As mentioned, the Marvin Heritage District form-based code does not have like minimum parking design standards as in reference to how many spaces are required. This is kind of going to be based off of market driven. I did a lot of research, looked at about 10 other municipality ordinances, and I would say about 75% of them for any type of commercial office retail, their minimum was 1 space for every 500 square feet of gross area for commercial retail and office. Restaurants were anywhere from 1 per 3 seats, or it referenced 1 per 1,000 square foot of seatable area for the actual restaurant itself. So with all that being said, that staff believes that the 57 that's being proposed is sufficient based off of just the research done, as well as the applicant has proposed to do temporary parking in the location of Building 3, because that is part of the second phase. It would just be to accommodate for additional parking on the site. The whole reason that the form-based code, or that the Heritage District doesn't have minimum parking standards is multiple reasons, dealing with the recommendation and kind of the intent to have shared use parking between developments. So so that would cut down on impervious, allow for more open space. The second part of that too is that this is supposed to be a walkable and district. Having these trail connectivity and stuff will allow for residents of Marvin and not in Marvin to walk, bike to the site, as well as the applicant will be including bike racks, bike parking for their development, as well as they are looking at additional parking options on some of the surrounding properties, either with a shared use agreement with the church or an adjoining property owner. So kind of getting into the history of this, the application was submitted in April of this year. They held, per our ordinance requirements, the applicant must hold 2 public involvement meetings. The first public involvement meeting was held on April 19th, 2023. They held 2 sessions for that meeting. All property owners within 1,300 feet of the property were notified of the meeting. Out of the 2 sessions, there was a total of 15 people that showed up to that first public involvement meeting. Those minutes and comments are in your guys' packets for review. The second public involvement meeting was held on June 6th. For that meeting, they had a total of 5 people come to that. Once again, the sign-in sheets and those minutes are in your packets as well. Planning Board reviewed and discussed this conditional rezoning submittal at 3 consecutive meetings in May, June, and July, making their recommendation in July, recommending approval with certain conditions, and I'll kind of get into here at the end what their formal recommendation was. So kind of getting into some land use plan and heritage district background, just for, the public's sake, if you're not familiar, the Marvin Heritage District, or what was deemed like a village center district, dates back to October of 2004 in our original land use plan. It honestly even dates further back than that, looking at historical documents, that this area was always kind of actually the village hub during the farming days. Furthermore, that, there was some more documents and everything that were completed to try to achieve this goal and recommendation of that land use plan. In November of 2020, we updated that land use plan. Once again, it was a goal and recommendation to establish the district. That's when things kind of really took off. The council appointed the Marvin Heritage District Steering Committee, which basically derived the form-based code and the small area plan. That small area plan was then adopted in December of 21, and the actual regulatory language of the form-based code was adopted in January of 2022. So with any type of rezoning, council must consider and adopt a land use plan consistency and reasonableness statement. Per the staff findings that, once again, the Village of Marvin 2020 land use plan and this Marvin Heritage District small area plan designates the subject property as the Heritage District, and furthermore as commercial only from a zoning standpoint. The scale and development is consistent with these adopted plans. Furthermore, the development is consistent with the goals and purpose of the plan by the following. Those are I can go through these, but basically what's in parentheses are the reference to the goals and recommendations in the land use plan. Furthermore, that the proposed rezoning of 9908 Newtown Road from R Marvin Residential to the Marvin Heritage District Commercial Only is reasonable and is in the public interest because it promotes the goals and recommendations of these adopted plans. And so recommendations, staff has recommended approval of this submission. Staff would like the board to discuss potential conditions to be discussed and considered to incorporate into the rezoning, as well as planning board voted at their July meeting to recommend approval with those following conditions: that the trail connection will be installed by the developer, require a detailed lighting and landscape plan with the construction documents, consider a fee in lieu or potential improvements for the Marvin Loop to be installed by the developer. Easement for the Marvin Loop will be dedicated per the site plan to the village. Consult with NCDOT on potential road improvements. Require a maintenance plan and agreement for parking, landscaping, and buffering, and remove rear parking and increase rear buffer if extra parking is secured from the neighboring properties. And then the final recommended condition was require a front area to be fenced if used for recreation. In short, the applicant has pretty much agreed or already addressed these conditions. There are a few that are still being worked out and will be incorporated into the development agreement. At this time, the development agreement is in draft form. So with that being said, we'll have the public hearing, but staff is also requesting that council table the decision, just so we can table the decision to their work session, so we can get the final details of that development agreement all kind of incorporated in with everything that's been discussed, and have that for you guys in final form and consideration at that work session. And that's just kind of getting in the conclusion next steps. But with that being said, does council have any questions? And if not, then we can open it up to the public.
Any questions from council initially? All right, so we can go up and open the, or Chaplain.
Usually we also let the applicant speak first, because if they have anything to supplement, because a lot of questions are answered. That's why we do it in this order.
Okay.
Let the planner go through, and then the applicant, and a lot of things get answered that way. And I don't know if the applicant wants to present, but I imagine they have someone here.
All right.
And I do concur with Hunter's statement. The development agreement will incorporate terms and provisions. We're still working through those, and it's normal to hash those out at the public hearing, and we may come up with some new ideas. So the ordinance that is proposed is with the zoning and the development agreement together, and that's just to emphasize, we recommend waiting on both of those to to allow it to get finalized for what we think will be a better product for the village.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Village Council members. Thanks for having us tonight. We've been, Suzanne Todd here on behalf of Zepsa Capital, who's the applicant in this rezoning request, and we're basically asking to rezone 1.5 acres from residential to Heritage District, commercial only. And this is in conformance with your vision for the Heritage District as well as the small area plan for this Heritage District area. Since we started this process in March, beginning of April, we've had a lot of meetings, a lot of people. You know, we wish we were as popular as you folks are and wish we had had this many people at our public involvement meetings early on.
Excuse me,
But
can I
we
have you-
appreciate everyone being here tonight.
Can I have you put the mic a little closer? Are you having problems hearing in the back?
Maybe I haven't even turned it on. Yeah, it's turned on. Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Is that any better?
Okay. I think really what we have a model, a 3D model of our vision here and our request, so you can kind of visually see that. And obviously, the folks in the audience are welcome to come up and look at it as well. We are proposing 2,300 square feet total with 2,100 or 21,500 of new build in the latter two buildings, as well as in addition to the existing house. And what's currently going on is a remodel of the existing structure. Ed told me today that it will need to be lifted off the ground to rebuild the foundation, so it'll be in the air for a little bit. But they are working through all those. We have been, as you know, our parking is 53 spaces for ADA per zoning. We're only required to have the 4 ADA parking spaces, no further parking spaces. We have been asked to commit to these 53 spaces, and we hope to be able to do that. Our only constraint with that is that we are really making an effort to preserve some of the beautiful natural heritage and champion trees that are on this site, and we may have to sacrifice a parking space to save a tree. So we're working with that, but we can assure you that we're making every effort to maximize the parking on the site as we can get. I also think what's really important to understand is the buffer that goes abutting the common open space that is behind our property to the rear of the site. And if I may approach, I do have it's basically a blow-up of some diagrams, cross-sections that are actually on our site plan. So if I may. Okay, sorry. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. And
You've got it.
Hunter, do you have a photo?
I have some extra copies if anybody in the audience would like. Okay.
even better.
I figured it might be easier in hand. All right, I just want to make sure everybody understands what they're looking at, and this would be the rear of the property. As you know, Newtown Road is up here, and this is the rear of the property, and what you have here is you can see the little car there, and that represents the parking spaces. And then what we are proposing is a 6-foot solid wood wall that would run along the rear of this property. And in addition to that, we're going to have 20 feet of natural existing buffer area. Plus, there will be the 30 feet of dedicated common open space in which the little walkways and the greenways run before you even get to the residential property of the preserve. Within, as a concession to a property owner that abuts or is on the other side of the common open space, we did agree to install some native plants to kind of fill the area. And Brian could probably speak more as to exactly what will be placed there, but they will be native so that they'll be able to thrive. And those will be field located to kind of fill in without crowding. But you can see on our site plan, and if we could turn that around, you can see that they are detailed sort of along here. So, under the new ordinance amendment, we have really, in our opinion, gone above and beyond to make every effort to not protect, but to, ensure that there's not going to be protecting as a buffer against noise, as well as any kind of headlights that might be coming from the site. I mean, you can see in the illustration where the headlights would be, and even on a higher, a taller car, the 6-foot wood fence would be more than adequate to screen that. So we believe they're going to have, it's going to be a better buffer, and it's going to be great noise protection as well as visual protection for the site from an adjacent neighborhood.
And would those plants be like evergreens that never, doesn't affect with fall or different types of seasons? They'll be evergreens?
Yes.
Native plants, okay.
Right. We are committed to evergreen plantings. I don't know exactly what they will be, but they will be native so that, they can handle drought, they can handle the soils and everything, so they can grow and thrive. So I think you had mentioned maybe magnolias, just arborvitaes, things like that.
Susan, can I ask a question? On the previous picture, the hand-drawn one here, looking at that little car you noted, it looks like it's below the ground level. What kind of height are you thinking is there? How much is the parking lot lower than the fence or that ground level?
I'm going to ask Tom West to answer that question. I think that might, I'm sorry. Brian Jeunesse, is that the curb and gutter? That's the curb and gutter,
Okay.
the difference.
So technically, looking at this, the average car is about 18 feet long. So you have 18 feet plus you need place to back up, plus another 18 feet before you get to a building. Is that what I'm?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's correct.
To add, that proposed back building would be
18.
114 feet from the residential property lines of the preserve. That's not the back property line of the common open space, but the actual residential property line. So it's in theory 84 feet off their back property line.
That's 84 feet from the property line to the back of the building.
So to even add over that with the rear setback of those residential structures, and depending on where some of them sit, they're going to be a minimum, or at a minimum would be over 150 feet from structure to structure, from the residential structures itself.
Okay.
So we have been able to agree with, and we're still working through some of the conditions or the recommendations that the planning staff to really get a full understanding. I think we're fully fine with most of them. I think there was one, a request that we, if we were to be able to secure adjacent parking or shared parking from adjacent, that we would remove the rear parking. This would be removing the rear parking row here if we were to get secure parking. And we are having trouble with that because we have been asked by people, try to get as much parking as you can, because there are concerns about that this may not be enough parking. But I do believe, since we're the first ones in, as this neighborhood or this district develops, there'll be more parking coming on as the other properties develop in accordance with the historic district. So, but because we're the first ones here, there's obviously a concern, is this enough parking? I think Hunter has run the calculations, and it is. But the removal of that back row presents a problem for us, because we are trying to keep as many parking spaces as we can, and even if you were to move parking or have some shared parking on adjacent lots, which we've not been able to work out right now to date, we are losing premium parking directly behind us, you know, for proposed uses for that building. So that is one of the ones that we are working with, trying to get an understanding of. But as I said, I think we're in agreement with most of the other conditions as
And
recommended.
to clarify, that was a recommended staff condition. After conversation, the clarification basically is that recommended condition was on behalf of basically before they start construction per se, if that additional parking was secured, that they consider removing those back and increasing the buffer. Once again, obviously, if the development gets approved, they do the land, the development of the land, put in the parking lot, and then secure additional parking. In no way, shape, or form is the village in saying they have to take out that parking and put more of a buffer. It's more of if the additional parking was secured in the meantime, then potentially consider making sure that buffer is just increased.
How soon, if, say, because I assume you're going to start with the restaurant first, and what I read was 75 to 90 people that, then you got, and then you got employees as well, and parking and all that. How soon after do you see yourselves or building the first building, and which building would it be? Would it be this back one, or would it be the side one?
We are looking at this piece being phase one, this would be phase two, and this would be phase three.
Okay. So, question. Say it's wildly successful. Everybody wants to come to your restaurant, and they start coming in and parking and stuff, and we're having an issue. Do you hold off on building phase two or phase three, or is there like a plan? Because, I mean, we want, if this is approved, we want it to be successful, obviously. We don't want boarded up buildings and stuff, but we're also got to be mindful of, is it going to fit, and are we going to be affected eventually, even with our parking? I haven't looked outside, but I was scared coming in just because I didn't know if there was enough for the meeting tonight. But, you know, I'm just thinking out loud, that kind of stuff is always something, and buffering, what is it going to look like? Is it similar to what the 6 foot, so there's probably a couple questions in here, similar to the 6 foot wooded fence that they have on the backside of the swim place over by, across from Coles, where they have the swim group?
Yeah.
And then that separates that parking from our residence is a 6 foot fence, if I'm not mistaken. But that was done not in Marvin, because that was not a Marvin property, but that is a 6 foot fence. Okay, and the buffering there, have we looked at that? I just wanted to get an idea of being able to visualize space, because it appears to be a lot more space here in between what you have as a building before you get to neighborhoods. And then the parking was the other issue.
This is Brian Janess, he's our landscape architect.
Okay,
About the parking,
yes.
we hope there's a parking problem. That's really, that's a good problem to have. Fortunately, what typically happens, and it's happening all over Charlotte now, if there's no parking, or if there isn't enough parking, people will either walk, they'll Uber. A lot of people are Ubering to restaurants because they don't want to be drinking
Sure.
and driving. I mean, people's patterns in coming to places like this are changing really very dramatically. That's why we have less parking requirements now than we used to. The other piece is this parking lot, will be empty probably when most of the activities are going on there. And this is just a short walk up the pathway. So hopefully this can be used. They're talking maybe there's a gravel lot across the street that belongs to the church. It doesn't belong to the Zeps's, but there's a lot of sort of potential ancillary parking around the site, which is really a good thing. So there's lots of other things, other places for spillover, which is exactly what you want, because you don't want to fill the whole site up with parking. Right, so there's lots of good other options for parking. And as it relates to this cross-section, I'm not familiar with that fence that you're referring to behind was it a swim club?
Yes, it's a swim club. I think it was 6 foot it was Union County, it wasn't Marvin. It affected Marvin residents because it was unincorporated Union County, which they decided to put the storage facility and a swim, what's it called? SMA? MSA? Yeah, MSA. So it's, so it's just a lot of traffic in there that right before you actually get into Marvin
I see.
properties.
I'll take a look at it. One thing I did want to note, we put the fence right on the curb line, so all of the buffer, 20 feet of that buffer actually belongs to this property, but all of the buffer will actually be on the other side of the fence, which will create that additional green. And you were asking about the plants. We're talking about things like magnolias, hollies, cryptomeria, I don't know if you know plants, but all things that will grow in sun, shade, heat, cold.
And that'll be soon
And
taken
these are
care of
plants
in
that
the
will get 20
in the
feet
maintenance
tall.
plan. That would be taken care of in perpetuity, I guess.
We have an agreement in one of our conditions that will provide a maintenance plan, as, in addition to a tree preservation and mitigation plan as well.
Okay.
But yes, you should not really, from the adjacent neighborhood, you shouldn't really be able to see the fence based on the plantings
Okay.
that we're proposing and what's already out there.
Okay.
So really, in sum, I think you've all seen this project, and, as we work towards getting our construction plans and, subject to rezoning approval, of course, some minor modifications may occur with the configuration, but it is our hope that this meets your vision. It's obviously consistent with the small area plan, and, reasonable and in the public interest, and we would ask for your approval.
So one of the things I'm just thinking is, as I was reviewing all this, and I like the elevation, what has been presented and showing real-world pictures rather than just drawings. That helps me a lot. But I'll take the blame for this because this was under my watch, but this is something that really bothers me on what we did at Publix, where as you drive by, you're seeing the back of a building when you're driving by, and they're putting a Dunkin' Donuts there, which I'm sure the signage will be there, but we're looking at the back of a building. So can you assure us that all sides of the building will have some sort of aesthetic appeal where we're not, if you're walking, say, from here, and we will wave our magic wand and get our, the greenway walkway, but also the amphitheater, and they're walking there, any way you're looking at the building, it's aesthetically pleasing and stuff, so.
Well, if anybody's going to be able to do it, it will be Zepsa Capital, and, and there are architects and engineers that work with them. So, and we do have the four-sided elevations that were submitted, so you can take a look at those. We are keeping it kind of simple on the back. Not only will there be, of course, buffers around the site, but we didn't want to put railing porches, things on the back where people might stop. We don't want them looking over in the adjacent neighborhood. Just keeping it simple. the back, but of course, emphasizing the sides and the front.
Okay. Any questions from council before we open it up to the public?
I do. And this is just maybe something to think about, and I don't know if you had considered this, but I'm looking at the site plan, and the third building that goes crossways across the back side of the property. Just in the interest of the buffer and all that, would it be possible in your phasing to reverse the phasing between buildings 2 and 3? Because, and the only reason why I'm asking this, obviously, most of your office retail type of activity would be during the day. There wouldn't be headlights, and it wouldn't be bothering anybody in a residential area because most people are at work, school, yada, yada during the day. My question would be, if that building was to go in first, most of the parking that would occur for the restaurant would probably be in the front lot. So it would kind of isolate that front lot from the back of the property if that building went in first. Not telling you what to do, but I'm just throwing out an idea that may have a little bit of effect on buffering just because of the building being there. It would also isolate, traffic and such from Newtown Road as well. Just a thought.
You make a very good point, and we will consult with the applicant as far as if that is something that could be worked out. It is true that probably the noisiest of the uses would be the proposed tavern. Of course, that is right there on Newtown Road.
All right, any other comments from council? All right, I think we'll open it up, if it's okay, to the public. Just a reminder, state your name, your address. We give you 3 minutes. We have a policy, it's not a dialogue where we're just hearing from you, so it's not the opportunity for conversation back and forth. But we'll
Mr.
give.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry, that's not accurate. They have as long as they want for a public hearing, and we can't go back and forth. This is not public comment.
Oh, you're correct. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Maybe you should be in this seat here. That's right. I'm thinking public comment, so my apologies for that. So we will have dialogue back and forth. There won't be that, and there's no time limit on this. However, we do, on a side note, would like to get this meeting finished before 8 o'clock because they're shutting off the water, is my understanding. We're having some issues with the facility, so we'll get started. Who do we have first?
Do you want me to go down the list? Did you want to pick representatives? What did you guys want to do?
Let's do the best we can to pick a representative and start there.
Austin, they should already have the representatives that are listed there. I've had a conversation with pretty
Okay.
much everyone, so
Got it. Okay.
everyone listed should be good.
Okay. First up is Mark Curtis, 8405 Viking Drive.
Evening.
Hi, Mark.
Mark Curtis, 8405 Viking Drive, Marvin, longtime resident. I wanted to speak regarding the proposed rezoning of 9908 Newtown, Zepsa Development, and I am speaking both as a resident and as trustee and beneficial owner of the adjacent property known as the Crane General Store. As many on the council already know, the old general store and Crane House pre-existed the formation of the village, and in particular, the general store was, I believe, the primary point of commerce in this area for nearly a century. And so we've been particularly encouraged with the progress this council has made toward both activating and preserving this district for future generations. With respect to the general store and the redevelopment of the Crane House, we have at different times spoken with Peter Zepsa, council members, and the planner, and as the Zepsa project continues to move forward, I wanted to voice our compliments and a single concern about the current plan. First, we are generally in favor of the overall design and plan of the redevelopment. We appreciate the thoughtful
Speak louder.
You have to eat the mic. You have to eat the mic.
All right. I thought this worked. I'll go back to the compliment part. That's what everyone wants to hear. First, we are generally in favor of the overall design and plan of the redevelopment. We appreciate the thoughtful approach, whoa, that is loud, to the aesthetic sense and the overall respect the plan pays to the character and heritage of this area. Having said that, and perhaps running the risk of being repetitive, we are concerned about the connectivity between the two parcels. While we have no immediate plans to develop the 2-acre site of the general store, we do want to make our intentions clear and without ambiguity. Our goal is to preserve and ultimately apply for a rezoning of the parcel in 2 phases, with the first being to restore the general store as a focal point of the village and a place for gathering of residents. We believe it is ideally situated in that regard, given the public improvements discussed by the village, and would require approximately 15% of that site. Regarding the balance of the site, we are not developers, and our intention is to work with a developer either on a JV or a sale basis to seek an approval consistent with the village's land use plan and in keeping with market demands at that time, while also acting in a complementary and cooperative fashion with adjoining properties. Our concern is that while general in nature, these objectives may be precluded by the proposed plan. We say that with some reservation, but as Peter Zepsa is aware, our primary concern is access to the store site from Newtown Road. It was relayed to us both by Hunter and Mr. Zepsa that in all likelihood the DOT would require a common entrance and exit for the 2 parcels. While this makes sense from a traffic standpoint, we have noticed that the stub to our parcel on the current plan has been placed at the very rear of the Zepsa property. Can I approach the bench? Yep. So this is the front, and this would be the access point to the adjoining general store. My read of the recommendation to the Village Council indicates that the proposed development is consistent with village goals, and number 8 of that recommendation says the plan provides shared parking solutions options and future vehicular connectivity within the district. I read that to mean the way cars would move between properties here is consistent with the village's goals. Is it? While on one hand, the village has remarked in several instances about the cultural heritage and importance of that general store, on the other hand, it's poised to move forward with a plan that isolates the adjoining property. Is it feasible that a patron of the old store would wind behind the rearmost building of the Zepsa property and then come all the way back to the front of Newtown to visit that general store? Is that considered honoring the connectivity you're seeking? Some might say this issue can be relegated to a discussion between 2 property owners, and ultimately the solution will of course necessitate an agreement between the 2 properties. But I also believe that it is incumbent upon the village to establish conditions on both owners to ensure the outcome will be functional, reasonable, and safe. I urge the council to consider the impact of the proposed rezoning on the future developability and livability of the adjoining properties within the district. I'm happy to stand up here.
So question, knowing what you know and what you really don't know, do you have a recommendation of the change in front right now, other than, I mean, do you have something in mind?
Well, it's predicated on, will there need to be 1 entrance and exit, or will there be 2? We have a slightly larger site. If you were to imagine the same amount of development on the general store site, I think what you would tell me is you need to make it 1 entrance and exit, and that's fine. So if we do that, then somehow, we would have to, after getting planning approval and a village approval, we would have to eliminate our entrance
and find some place to enter where you'd go to the village store, the store and the parcel in the rear. I would think that that would need to be somewhat closer to Newtown. So in other words, this stub that was, I think it was here before, but it's here now, and that the. No.
Wouldn't,
This stub that I think the planning board had recommended removing if they had parking on the other side, I feel like somebody driving their car in, driving all the way around this building, coming back, and all the way up here to the store, and when they're done having their coffee or donut or whatever they're having, then they drive all the way back, and all that. That seems not practical. I would suggest something in and around this area. I realize that we've got some heritage trees, and I appreciate they're trying to save those heritage trees. So I would say we should just work together to figure out some place that doesn't isolate the store, allows future development, but at the same time, preserves as much as we can of what we like about the project, which there's a lot to like about the project.
And I'll add to that, and Mark, and I know I haven't had a chance to give you a call back, so my apologies on that. But I have had preliminary conversations with DOT about this, because one of the concerns was that, is DOT going to allow 2 ingresses, or even however it's done, that close to the roundabout? What DOT has conveyed to me is that they would, and this is, not in writing, but what they have conveyed is that they would allow for at least an ingress into the Crane Store property site. And then the egress would obviously be through this site. Meaning like you would have just a ride-in only into the Crane Store property, and then they would go through and come out here at the Zepsa property. So that is one thing that I do know that was conveyed to me, as well as the second option is that with the current location of the driveway, I'm trying to think, did we ever discuss if it could be moved towards the property line, Peter?
There's also DOT regulation on how far back the next turn can be into our property.
Okay.
Once you're in the property, they dictate how.
Peter, can you come up to the microphone so we can hear you? I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think DOT has a rule about once you enter into the property, how far back you have to go before you can turn again, because they don't want cars turning in and then having to turn again.
and let me just say one other thing. You're missing the 4th leg of the roundabout. That's a real important piece, right? If the roundabout over here, I think in your plan, you have a proposed connection that comes in from that roundabout, right?
That was just a conceptual
Okay,
thing,
but it's probably a good idea to come off that roundabout and then to get into this property, because as he just said, it's going to be really difficult coming out of the roundabout to connect in here.
But who pays for that?
Well, it's part of the development of the rest of this commercial district that you're planning. It happens as development, just like these guys are paying for what's happening on their site. So that piece of driveway or road, sorry.
so it appears that this is kind of a 3-pronged conversation, because we have to know what DOT is going to allow us to do, and then that would allow the 2 of you to kind of figure out how we do it. But when I first saw it, I looked at Hunter and said, the critical piece of this is DOT, because we can sit here and talk about this all day, and you can come up with an agreement all day, but in DOT, we know how lovely they are. And they go by their rules, and God bless them that they do. But I think that's something that we've noted from both, and Mark, appreciate you bringing that up. But that's something for maybe Hunter to really work with getting the information from DOT and then relaying that to the 2 of you.
Yeah, and just once again, that, if the location of the stub was to be moved, if the rezoning is approved, that is a minor modification. So that's something that can be done after the fact, as well as part of their proposal and in their development agreement, they are agreeing to grant that basically ingress, egress easement to the adjoining property owners for that shared use. So, that's going to be taken care of one way or another. That access will be there in some form or fashion.
I think a lot depends on how that site lays out, right? There's nothing there but that one building. Once you have a development plan, you know, there's a lot of opportunities for connectivity.
Mark, just out of curiosity, has there thought in potentially moving the same building and just redo it, or just leaving it right where it's at?
Yeah, we're.
Just out of curiosity.
We'd like it to remain as close to what it is with the
Okay.
paint job. As close to
Maybe a
what it
little bit of
is.
paint.
You know, now including the patinaed roof, you know, hopefully that's not offensive to anybody, but we're hoping to keep the roof and the, you know, as much as we can of it. Some of it needs to be replaced, obviously.
Okay.
All right, keep forgetting about that.
Any other questions from council? And then, do you have a time frame when you're, like, any of this?
The store, we think, should happen, we'd like to come before you before the end of the year on the store. As far as the balance of the parcel, which is the majority of the parcel, we don't. And like I said in my comments, we're not developers. We're not planning on personally developing it. We would like to have a hand in it so that something ugly doesn't come along, but you all done a pretty good job so far, so maybe we just hand it off to the next person.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Who do we have next?
All right, next up is Peter Zepsa. You just wrote it down? Okay, we'll skip it.
You're just signing in.
I taught him to sign in to make our numbers on our PIMs.
Next up is Sankar Ramesh, 4062 Flowering Peach Road.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, make sure we have it. At least if you hold it close, that seems to work.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is my first time speaking, so I haven't done a prepared remarks or anything. So let me just convey my concerns or concerns of some of the property owners of Preserve of Marvin, right? So I'm the HOA president of Preserve of Marvin. I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, but I'm speaking on behalf of a few concerned residents from the preserve, including one property owner whose property abuts this exact rezoning. It's directly behind this property. I think if this is the back of the property, it's right behind. So first, I have a couple of things to talk about. So we obviously strongly oppose the zoning itself to begin with. But if that is, that's already been decided, we have a couple of other options we are thinking of, especially with trying to suggestions, right? I think one of the, I think I saw a note where it said it was a commercial conditional rezoning, right? Conditional rezoning. We would at least have some conditions like saying that we won't have a restaurant, especially serving liquor or anything like a pub or something like that, because it's a residential area and it's next to a church, and we don't want some kind of a area where liquor is being served in that area. Probably more of like offices, like a medical office or something like that. That's fine, but not. We don't want it to be zoned for like restaurants or limited use of commercial, if that makes sense. So the other thing is what we were saying, yeah, and there was also talk about having amplified music or something like that, and that's going to drift to our neighborhood, which is problematic by itself. So, and in addition, a couple of other quick things, what we are thinking about is, I know the drawing which the lady passed out, it had like 30 feet and 20, I think it was 20 and 30 feet. The 30 feet is basically, some of it is the greenway and some of it is the homeowner's property, if I remember correctly. And I think the 20 feet is the buffer they're proposing from the fence to this. So we are asking, yes, this particular one. So if everybody can see this 20 feet, this 30 feet is actually our preserve's property, and some of it is the greenway. So this 20 feet is the buffer Zepsa is talking about. We would like that 20 feet to be at least 30 feet, so that there's going to be a little less of interference. And then the 6 feet wood fence, we are at least requesting an 8-foot fence. That's some of the comments which we sent out to the council earlier yesterday and last week. The last one, I think there was a proposal of a gate on the fence coming into our neighborhood, which we strongly oppose, because there's going to be some riffraff traffic getting into the neighborhood from the development or from the like it could be like if there's still development or something in the commercial zone, people walking into the neighborhoods like that. So we want to avoid that gate, but have a fence there, like an 8-foot fence. So, and of course, after I saw some of the presentation today, I was also worried about the parking concerns because there could be overflow parking, not just here, but in our community as well, because that's the closest community and there is a quick walkway into that particular location. We definitely don't want the gate there, nor parking issues impacting our easy flow of traffic into our neighborhood and out of our neighborhood. So that's a few things what we are suggesting. Let's see, and I have the property owner itself here. He's one of the direct impact for him. But we have several homeowners in Preserve of Marvin who are very concerned about this development, obviously. Anything else you want to add? I have a fellow board member also here, Sharon.
Sure. In addition, I think we were also thinking
Make sure you have the mic, if you would.
instead of a wooden fence, why can't it be a brick fence so that I think it's much more safer, easy to maintain, right? I think no hassle. I think, as he said, I think parking and traffic in this area would be a big concern. Considering, I think, the number of parking spots I saw, I don't think it's enough.
Okay. Okay. Any questions or comments or dialogue from council?
Hunter, do we have is there anything in any of our provisions that states the height of a buffer fence? Does it have to be 6 feet? Does it have to be 10 feet? Does it have to be any feet?
The minimum's 5, the max is 8. But, the 6 is in that, so it does technically meet that ordinance requirement. But that would be something for council to, consider and discuss that further with the applicant to raise the height of that fence.
In material, the suggestion was made from wood to brick. Is that?
Once again, the materials for any type of fence within the Heritage District says any type of, solid wood fence. I think brick or stone masonry type fencing is also allowed, and then it gets into, black metal type fencing. But once again, it's all of that is allowed. So with that being said, it's just kind of, up to the applicant to, decide on that material because it does meet our ordinance, but council can also, like I said, request, and the applicant can consider that as part of their site plan for their approval.
So the comment that was made about the buffer that is really on their side, is that their buffer?
That 30-foot buffer that is part of it is the preserve common open space. It's not individual property, like individual owned property. That whole 30 feet is HOA common open space preservation for the preserve in Marvin. The reason with it, the way the ordinance reads, and so this was, done part of the recent changes in that, the form-based code, was that the minimum buffer requirement is a 50-foot vegetative buffer for commercial only that abuts suburban residential. However, with, a lot of research, and then this was also part of Planning Board's recommendation, is that if it abuts an additional buffer that is preserved and platted or deeded as permanent conservation, such as the common open space, then that can be basically accounted for as long as that the minimum of the net of the 50 feet of the buffer is met.
And I would think too, is if it's in an ordinance that developer that developed that neighborhood needs to have that buffer, and then when the next abutting neighborhood, whether it's developed or not, they would have to, I'm trying to think out loud. If a neighborhood, say that was a neighborhood that where they're proposing this restaurant, what would they require? I mean, what kind of buffer would they require? Just an additional 30 feet? Or because they have, or just the 20 feet?
I'm not sure.
I'm curious about, you know, because I think we put these things in place for this developer who put the 30 feet in. So then the next developer coming in, knowing that you have that there's a fairly long area between building, actual building and structure and house building where it's.
So we have a buffer matrix, so it kind of depends, but for the most part, any property identified as commercial only that abuts suburban residential, in this case, which is the preserve, it is a minimum of a 50-foot buffer. If it's commercial or mixed use that abuts rural residential, for example, Meadowlark or Three Pond Acres, that is increased to, there's two options depending on the existing vegetation and what those uses specifically are, but it's 85 feet to 100 feet. So it just depends on kind of the adjoining use. And so this property does abut suburban residential, and so it'd be 50. So if the Crane store were to come through this process, that only applies to the rear buffer. That's not like a side buffer in between the two developments. So I think the minimum throughout the preserve, it's a 25-foot preservation strip, because that's what our subdivision ordinance requires. So it does vary in width, but specifically in the location, pretty much from the Crane store property, and that is 30 feet in width, and that is verified based off the final plat.
Okay. Just been notified, we got 30 minutes before they shut down this building for us because of the water. So we're going to go ahead and continue with public comments, and then we can talk.
Can I make a comment, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Okay, and with regards to their concerns about parking in their neighborhood, is it possible that we can put signs that specifically prohibit public parking in their development at the entrance so that our deputies can enforce if there was anybody to park illegally in their development? Is that something that we can do?
So the preserve is a Marvin Street. We do on that street. We can put regulations for no parking along the street if that becomes problematic. That is something that's in our jurisdiction.
Okay.
Okay, and the other thing I want to address, and I just want to be as fair about this, and the way the ordinance reads, it sounds a little bit offensive, but amplified music means any type of device that has an amplifier, i.e. your stereo in your house, your surround system on your television set, any of those devices are amplified devices. So if your neighbor is playing a movie on his or her TV with their surround system on, they are 10 times closer to your house than these buildings are. So I just want to remind you that there is 100 and how many feet, Hunter, between buildings?
114.
Well, that back building is 114, so the
And then the restaurant, which
over
would be the building
500.
in question, is how many feet from that?
I don't have an exact, but it would be over 500 feet.
Okay, so we're looking at a distance of over 500 feet from the restaurant building, which may have music within the restaurant people listen to while they're dining. So I feel like that your concerns about the amplified music, I feel like that's probably not going to be an issue for this development. We're not talking about a rock and roll club here. We're talking about a restaurant. So just wanted to make that point.
And I will add too that we do have a noise ordinance that, regardless of who you are, is applicable to any resident or property in Marvin, that if there is a violation, it will be addressed.
Okay. Are you look? Okay.
Mayor, if I may quickly respond.
Yes, sure.
To the question. When you're.
Yeah. Good.
The issue with we've looked at this before, and had a request to increase the height of the wooden fence from 6 feet to 8 feet. And we actually really looked at that. it starts looking billboardy and cartoonish from the development side. We opted, and we also, the request was made, can you do masonry wall? Well, number one, nobody's going to see it because of the existing vegetation that's out there right now. And number two, in order to mobilize and put in the foundations and build that wall, it would necessitate removing a lot of those existing trees in that 20-foot buffer area. So instead, opted for wood fence, easy to slide in there and install, and then on top of that, put in the additional plantings of native vegetation. We have committed to them being a minimum of 6 feet high at the time of planting, and this would be a variety that would grow between 15 to 20 feet at full maturity. So we really have looked at that, and we really think this is the better option.
Okay.
Thank you. Right, and as you saw, it really does a great job of blocking.
I'm going to try to make this real quick. They had mentioned something about a pathway, a doorway going in and out.
Yes, sir.
And I'll ask him, to me, I'm keeping my residents out. And I'm just making a statement. If I lived in the preserve and and then I've got to walk, I've got to go all the way around to come in. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Mr. Mayor.
Again, I'm just asking. I wanted to make it brief. Okay.
We can't hear, so if anybody wants to talk, please go up to the podium, grab a
Mr. Mayor.
microphone, please, because the yelling, we can't hear it.
Hang on one
Thank
second,
you.
sir. Please wait for just a second. Mr. Mayor, can I
Yes.
suggest that we get through the public comment section and we can have
Okay.
some of the rebuttals
Yeah,
and
let's
back
get
and
to
forth?
the next person who's up for public comment.
Next up is Gary Rose, 1209 Lark Ridge Court.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Gary Rose, 1209 Lark Ridge Court in Marvin. Hunter, I appreciate your background on the Heritage District and the long time planning we went through it, and the consultants and the staff and the extra work. I think it was approved January of 2022. So the first project that got approved was a residential project, 68 homes, quarter-acre lots, 5-foot setbacks. Not exactly in the definition of heritage, in my opinion. So now we're up for our second project, is a commercial project. And I'm really concerned about the future and the precedent this sets. Because this is the first one, and it sets a precedent. And so obviously we have this strong zoning in place, which we all feel good about. But now I look at the deviation table, I think this was from the last council meeting, and forgive me if this is out of date, but I think there's 8 variations that the developer wants to have, which is fair. They should ask for those kind of things. So I look at the 8 things here. And the first one is a 100-foot tree buffer. That's the code, 100-foot tree buffer. The deviation requested is a 20-foot undisturbed buffer with a 6-foot fence, 6-foot wood fence. Okay. I see the code for a height for a conventional square commercial building is 1.5 stories. The deviation requested is 2 stories. Okay. Part of the code here is that the building can have a 500 square foot footprint, but building size of only 3,000 to 7,000 square feet. Deviation requested, building size 10,000 square feet. Okay. Code is parking lot surfaces, paved parking lot if you have more than 10 parking spaces. Deviation, use stone, gravel, or turf for non-ADD accessible parking spots. Okay. Code requires provision of a 20 by 25 foot loading space. Deviation, no designated loading space. Code, village code requires 10 by 20 foot parking spaces. Deviation, allow 9 by 18 foot parking spaces. The last one I have is, and I'm surprised the residents are more upset about this, the code. Use standard prohibits restaurants serving alcohol to have amplified music in exterior guest areas. The deviation requested, allow restaurants serving alcohol to have amplified music in exterior guest areas. So there's justifications for these requests, and they're provided, and a lot of them make sense. I'm not going to argue with that. But I guess my point is, this is the first commercial project, and you set the precedent for going forward. So I just ask the council to continue to do what's right for the community and the people in the town, and resist the developers' wants and demands and wishes, because those aren't always harmonious with what's best for the community. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, next up.
Sorry, microphone off. Next up is Vamsi Vemuri, 6004 T Olive Road.
Hi everyone. Good evening. My name is Vamsi Vemuri, and I live in 6004 T Olive Road, Marvin. So my major concern is the traffic. We are already experiencing traffic without any commercial properties around here. And we moved into this area which suits our requirements or which met our requirements, peaceful, calm, village environment. And now with all this commercial zoning, I think we are sacrificing all those. So I want to raise this as a concern of mine, my fellow residents as well, I believe. But making commercial properties in a residential area may affect traffic and also safety issues also.
Thank you.
Next up is Sharon Patil, 8007 Pampas Lane.
Hello, Council. Sharon Patil, 8007 Pampas Lane. I think I spoke a little bit already, right? I think same concerns. I wish there is no restaurant with a pub kind of setup. I think if we could find something which is more kind of like Gelswell with a neighborhood, I think it will be pretty good. I think in the worst case scenario, I think some of the ask I think the community has in terms of building a brick wall with the appropriate height and not having a gate into the community are the few things I think I would be asking for this council to seriously consider.
Okay, thank you.
And last but not least, Jill Janes, 8504 Viking Drive.
Hello, good evening. I'm Jill Janes, 8504 Viking Drive. First, I want to say that I appreciate all the work that goes into a project like this, a project development. I think the elevation you guys did for us to try to visualize things was nice. And I appreciate the effort that goes into the planning for a project like this. I went to the public information meeting, and I also listened online to the planning board meeting to see what their take on the deviations would be, what their take on the residents' concerns would be. I noticed 2 letters that were attached in the minutes, so I went back and read those letters, and I feel those residents' concerns. I think they can be mitigated, but unfortunately, the discussion in the planning board as it relates to access from the pub, and first I need to clarify, in the public information meetings, the word pub tavern was used. Now restaurant is being used, and I think there's a distinction. I asked in the public information meeting what the capacity would be, and we were told somewhere between 50 to 90. depending on what they can carve out in the home, keeping the facade. So to me, that speaks pub tavern. That's what I would think they're referring to. That said, we want all this connectivity. I'm not sure how much connectivity some of the residents of the Village of Marvin want. However, there are already established trails that are right here on this property. And I understand the whole idea of this is to allow people to walk there so they don't have to park there. But folks, trails beget issues. And during the discussion of the planning board, it was interesting to me, nobody had really walked back there. They haven't walked it for themselves. I did the other day. It opens right into their neighborhood. They have $1.5 million homes by Zillow that abut this property. Now you've got a trail that gives access right to their cul-de-sac. And I can see the benefit of access, but I also see a huge negative for these homeowners. So I don't know if there's a way to mitigate that, but there is, regardless of whether there's not a light at night, people are going to be on those trails, especially with commercial activity available to them. They may not be in use now, but that trail, that access goes to a cul-de-sac. You could see where people would pull in. I'd never been back there. I was like, oh, yeah, I could see where, neighbors would pull, not neighbors, but whomever going to the pub or tavern, what have you, could park there. It's a quick walk. It's easy peasy. So I would ask that the council get back with the residents, maybe, and with the ZEPSA folks. I appreciate that the ZEPSA family are Marvin residents. I appreciate their effort here in trying to do a really nice project. I think 3 buildings, 2 of them being 2-story on a 1.5 acre parcel, it feels like a lot to me. And so I would just ask that the residents who are just going to be dramatically impacted, and you can talk about the fence dimming parking lights, maybe. That's supposedly an office building back there, so you would expect that use wouldn't be there, but perhaps parking for the pub might. So cars coming and going. When you take a lot of, and I've just experienced this, DOT came by and took out all the underbrush and vegetation, and my residence backs up to one of our highways. It's what it feels like. Boy, I'm going to tell you, that sound barrier gone. So if they're playing, and what the deviation asked for, as Gary alluded to, was amplified music. This is another concern of mine. And you can imagine that a tavern would want to have exterior amplified music. That, you would expect that. You wouldn't expect that in a residential neighborhood every Friday night. If we put an amphitheater here, there's going to be other sound generating potential, right? So I feel like there needs to be every effort made to protect the current sound barrier that's there through shrubs or whatever, and I think you're trying to do that. But I would say that's a huge concern, and I am with Gary on the fact that, the form-based code, you guys unanimously approved that in January of '22. That gives, the form-based code, for those that don't know, gives you a plan, almost a diagram. You can go in and look at the different facades that are supposed to go in a commercial or a mixed use or whatnot. There are guidelines. And first commercial opportunity, here we are, we're pulling back the buffer from 100 feet, which was there to protect the residents. It's not for the developer, it's for the residents. But now we've pulled that back to a minimum 50 foot, and we're counting 30 feet, my understanding, of their open space in preserve. So I would just ask that, that council would step back and maybe relook at some of these things and see if we can mitigate these issues, because I do believe what is done now sets a precedent, and it's a concerning one. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more public comment?
Ma'am, can I just?
What's the, I mean, I'm fine if he's, yeah, I mean, this is an open thing, so feel free if you want to come up.
Okay, yeah. Please state your name and address. My name is John B., and I live in 6000 T. Olive Road. And I also received a letter because my home is impacted by this application. And I want to put some comments since the lady just mentioned the trail. And I share a lot of my neighborhood's concern about the safety, about the kids, but for my family, it's a little bit different. And because I'm just empty nester, just basically my wife and I walk the trail every day, probably once at least. So in this case, actually, one thing I see the issue with the fence is, say here we propose, say, it's a 6 feet tall or 8 feet tall or what kind of things. And however, as a city, and also as we walk along the trail, I want to see actually a uniform fence, not just one developer say, I'm going to put 8, another come here and say, I'm going to put 6. So in this case, actually, when I look on my left side, it's ugly. So basically say, I would say, probably I just recommend the city hold this application, and until the city just develop a uniform, say, as 20 feet buffer or 30 feet buffer, as a 6 feet fence or 8 feet fence. So in this case, actually, when we walk on a trail, beautiful, and no gap. Just basically say different developer will see actually it's just one single piece instead of say a different thing and a different style. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name is Chandrasekhar Boini Manuel, 8004 Pampas Lane, Marvin. I'm the property that's right behind the proposed construction. The hall is full because of me. All of the community rallied around it, including the members of the board who are here. I think we made our points, but there are a few things I want to emphasize. You'll find a diverse community in the preserve. A lot of people like me moved literally continents when we came to this country, and then states to pick Marvin, specifically the preserve, because it was the preserve at Marvin. If you will remember, the builders actually charged a premium for the wooded lots at that point. That whole entire premise will be disrupted when we start doing the commercial property. That's one. Second thing, the common area that they're talking about, that used to be wooded. Now that's the trail. So the green there is gone. There's no green there. So additionally, what you're suggesting, or what the builder is suggesting, is only a 20-foot green. If you go now, it looks green. You should come in the fall Even I can see all the way from there anyway up to the road. There's going to be nothing except the back of the third building that they're talking about. Third thing, which is a big no-no for us, is the security concern that we have with the gate that you're proposing. Look, I understand what you said about people, not having access. Every once in a while, people will want to go to the restaurant. We live fine without the restaurant now. But if there are inebriated riffraff people, they just have to breach once for that security to come from. And I'm sure if you look at the deputy report, the numbers have only been increasing over the months and years. Third thing, the Marvin Elementary School is right there. The residents that you'll find are all people who have, most of the people have very small kids, including me. I have 3 small girls who go to that school. It is the preserve and that wooded and secure fence that we have, that tree line that we have, is what gives us the freedom to let our children play and walk on the walkway. And we're very happy for the public that uses it. But just by opening it up for the access to the restaurant, and look, if you're going to open a medical office or a dental office, I don't walk with my kids to the dental office anyway, right? And like everybody said here in one voice, we are very okay to go around the property to if we have to go to the restaurant, right? I know everybody talked about the 180 feet, whatever, from the back of the property. Sir, I am a practicing Christian. I don't know what the church felt, but I was very concerned when you said you're going to have amplified loud music right next to a church. I don't know, again, how the church feels, but I don't think that's a good idea. Something more mellowed down, like maybe a coffee shop or an ice cream place, things like that would make a lot of sense, which will draw enough or more traffic than what you're thinking right now with the restaurant anyway. So the biggest concern is that gate. The second one is the wooded fence. If the ordinance allows for 8 foot. Look, there's a reason why the preserve did not allow us to put wooden and picket fences. They insisted that we put metal fences because of the amount of rot that happens in wood in that area. And if you walk by, you will see. There is no guarantee that the wooden fence is going to be there after a year or 2. That's why we're asking for it to be at least an 8-foot fence and not be backed by a gate on the third side.
And I want to give time because just so you all know, at 8 o'clock, we're being asked to shut it down, so we won't be able to continue the public hearing, but staff can still talk. But I do want to give the developers a chance to, because I think we're getting the message. We're hearing what you're saying.
That was the idea, right? That's why we rallied our community to come and speak today.
Okay.
We thank you for the hearing. We thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the way I think Nestor and Austin, we met with them. We worked with Susan before. But none of the requests that we've made have been accommodated thus far, right? The deviation document exactly states what it stated before. So that's why we thought we will come and present our case. And if these 4 or 5 things are addressed, I think we should be getting along fine. Thank you.
Do we have any more public comments that we haven't heard the content already?
Okay, so I'm going to give an opportunity for the developer to, if you want to address any of the concerns that they had and maybe bullet point that just because of time, and then staff can continue.
Mayor, can I just ask one question before you do this? And this is just for council's information. In the public information meetings, for those who came up to address your concerns, how many of you came to each of the public information meetings when the developer? Can you raise your hand? I came to one. Okay. And listen, and please, I'm looking over here to see you. Thank you so much for coming. And I want to say thank you so much. Well, what I'm trying to figure out and what I'm trying to find out is this is important, and you're making great concerns, and we're listening to every single one of them because it is important to us. But there's an importance to having these public information meetings, and if no one comes to these public information meetings, if it's not important to come to them, and I'm not here to defend them, they can't make changes, they can't address your concerns if you're not here. So We will take all this information, all your concerns, and we'll take it back and we'll discuss it. And I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to discuss it with the developer. But there is an importance, and these public information meetings doesn't have to impact your neighborhood directly. If there's a public information meeting in the village of Marvin, I want to be there because it impacts everybody in the village of Marvin. But we have coffee with council twice a month. Nobody shows up. We have town hall meetings. Nobody shows up. Now, I'm sorry. I can only address, and this council can only address, the issues that are in front of us. Because if we don't hear from anyone, you know what we assume? We're doing everything right. So, but again, I appreciate, and I'm sure this council appreciates, everyone coming tonight and voicing your concerns, because it does make a difference. And I can tell you, I've heard everything you said, and I think there's things that we can work together on to get to where we need to be.
Thank you, Jamie. So go ahead if you want to come up and.
In the interest of time, we will defer comment.
Okay.
We're good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Christina, what's the deal? We have to,
I recommend you go ahead and close the public hearing. You've already heard your comments, and you can still hear additional information because this is a legislative decision, but go ahead and close that and get that done. And then, so I recommend closing the public hearing and then saying you will defer the decision on the zoning and the development agreement. And there's discussion of it being at the work session, or you can defer it until the next meeting if you think you need more time. But I would do that in one motion. So motion, or you can do it separately, close the public hearing, but you also need to address the zoning before you.
right,
And I do recommend that you defer that until it's the zoning and the development agreement, because they go together. So defer that until, and that's for y'all to decide.
so
You've got 2 meetings coming up.
right. So we'll go,
Chaplain, do you want that in one motion?
Either way. Yeah, one is fine, though.
All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion to close the public hearing.
so we're closing the public hearing. That's just one motion? I thought we were doing both
One
motions.
motion, I'm
Okay,
gonna do one, and
All right.
then we'll come back to it.
okay. Further discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the motion is closed for public hearing. Now, we normally discuss this, but because of the circumstances with the building and flooding issues, they're shutting it down. Logistically, Christina, who can stay here? Or do we all have to leave? I'm confused about the 8 o'clock.
We're not going to have water as of 8 o'clock.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you need to use the facilities, go ahead, but, I mean, we technically should be closed if we don't have public facilities. So
So at this point in time, then we should close the meeting as well.
Unless, is there a lot of people here to speak on Sage? I don't think that one, there's 2.
All right, well, let's get these public hearings, let's get the public hearings done, because they've been advertised, people are here for them.
Yep.
I think
okay.
that's fine.
I'm gonna make a motion to defer the decision of the zoning and development agreement, for the rezoning CZ application, or application CZ 2023-1 to rezone to 1.51 acres located at 9908 Newtown Road until the August 31st work session.
Okay, so that'll be moved to the work session for further discussion. And with that, then we'll,
Nope, that's a motion.
further discussion?
So moved.
All's in favor?
Aye.
So that motion passes. So that's been tabled essentially, correct?
Correct. It'll come back before you at your August 31st meeting.
Okay. Is that at 9 a.m.? Yes. And then we now need to open the other.
That's correct.
Okay. My apologies, I just learned of the building issues as I was arriving, so. All right, so we're going to move into open the public hearing to consider approval of the Sage at Marvin subdivision preliminary plat construction, construction plans. I need
So
a,
moved. So
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Hunter, you want to take it from there? So just for those that are leaving the next meeting, the decision has been tabled to the work session, which is on Thursday,
August 31st.
August 31st at 9 a.m. It'll be on the agenda for that. So we won't be discussing or deciding anything tonight, so,
And for those of you who are here, you can always come to coffee with council on the 29th to have further conversations with your council members, to get some further clarification or voice more concerns.
yeah,
So please come to those.
yeah, we usually have 2 council members at that meeting, and that, you said, is on the 24th, Kim?
28th, I think.
29th.
29th.
It's Tuesday night
Yep.
at 6
It's
o'clock.
actually Wayne and I will be here for that. That's what I have scheduled. You and I will be here for that. So come by and visit. Yeah, did you know that, Wayne? I have you down. It's Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. Okay. Thank you for
Okay,
those.
so public hearing,
Public hearing?
Ready?
Go ahead.
So,
Hunter?
I'm gonna make a motion to open the public hearing for the
We
Sage
already did.
Marvin subdivision.
We did that.
Did
and
we?
Hunter was
Yep,
going to
the
speak.
The public
Alright,
hearing
let's
is open. So this is the preliminary plat and construction documents for the Sage at Marvin. If you recall, the Sage at Marvin was a proposed subdivision at the corner of Joe Carr and Marvin Road. For the original sketch plan approval was for 23 lots on 43 acres. Just per our ordinance, basically, the next step after that sketch plan has been approved, they submit their construction documents and preliminary plat. Our ordinance also requires a public hearing for said approval. With that being said, there's nothing that's changed outside of these construction documents and preliminary plat have taken out those 3 larger estate lots out of their subdivision proposal. They're still going to be developed as the original proposal, but just from a construction document phase to make sure everything kind of, works from stormwater, sedimentation, erosion control, and so on. They were taken out because they were very low impact of those 3 properties. With that being said, I can go into detail about this if you got, but at the same time, for time purposes, in short, all that staff is requesting is for you guys to consider approval of these construction documents contingent upon final engineer review and any applicable outside agency approvals. The staff and our engineer has reviewed these plans, or sorry, let me rephrase that, reviewed their first submittal, sent comments back. They have submitted back their revised plans. Those are currently being reviewed. So unless there's any questions, comments, or concerns on those plans from the council, that's what staff's just recommending approval, and just make that contingent upon the final engineer review and approval.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, the land as it sits right now, by right, what could it yield?
So it's at 43 acres. It was approved as a conservation subdivision, which allows for smaller lots, down to, it's 30,000 square feet, roughly 3/4 of an acre. And it does allow a certain percentage of those lots to go less than 30,000, but never less than 25,000. To qualify as a conservation subdivision, they have to have 15%, a minimum of 15% common open space and dedicated open space, as well as the yield. It's roughly, the equation's roughly like 0.87. It's basically 87% of the 43 acres is what their density yield was. And so in theory, with that, they would be allowed to yield, I think it was like 27 lots. And they're only proposing, like I said, this one's 20, but in totality, it's 23 with those 3 larger estate lots.
Okay. Thank you.
Hunter, what was the entrance to this neighborhood has been there? Was there a reason they put it specifically right there? Were there any concerns from DOT?
So the original approval during the sketch plan process actually had an entrance off of Marvin Road. They actually had 2 entrances. They had an entrance off Marvin Road to Newtown, or to Joe Carr Road. Then they revised it and had one only on Marvin Road. DOT came back and said since Marvin Road is obviously more one of the heavier traffic heavier trafficked roads, that they would request that it be moved to Joe Carr. The recommendation from NCDOT was actually to have that lined up across from Pacer. However, there is a 200-foot DEQ buffer on that side property line, and DEQ wouldn't allow them to encroach into that buffer, so then they had to shift their entrance to the left, so it's not actually directly lined up with Pacer.
So there is a specific reason why it's there and it's not going to move.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for Hunter?
Mayor, if I could make a comment, I think we've stated this before in the subdivision approvals. This is a continuation of an old zoning code that is unique, and I think it was made primarily to make council aware, but it also does give the public the opportunity to ensure compliance. But most of the time, this is done on a staff level, and the purpose is to make sure it complies with your zoning code. So it's not a rezoning. You don't have as much deference as you do with the rezoning, but you do want to ensure compliance. In the memo and the statement from the planner confirms. But I just wanted to note that because this is a little bit different.
Okay. That said, we're going to open up for public comments. Do we have anyone here to speak?
First up is Katie Shaw, 9824 Saddle Avenue.
Hi,
Hi,
my
Kate.
name is Katie Shaw. I live at 9824 Saddle Avenue. And I guess the first thing I'd like to address, Mr. Lean, when you mentioned that people come to public hearings, I don't know if there was hearings regarding this neighborhood that's going in. I apparently live 2,000 feet from the neighborhood, so I was not aware of it till the sign went up a week or so ago. Apparently, if I lived 1,300 feet, I would have known. So, I mean, that's one reason why people don't come.
And I greatly appreciate it. It's frustrating from our standpoint.
Oh, I get it.
Because we've done this for 3 years now, this council, and we have no one show up. And I'm sorry, but we can't address issues because there's call from the
Could you
council.
expand the area of notification in the future?
Well, we have signs out, other than just, I don't know.
But it's
I don't-
an
but
aside.
I
I'm
know-
sorry, I
and
was just trying to.
And I was not pointing
Oh,
that
no,
at you.
no, I'm
I
just,
completely-
And
like, future improvement
But to
suggestion,
the
that's all I'm
attorney's
saying.
point, in fairness to the attorney's point, this is sort of different because this is just making sure that the current zoning for this particular property is good. It's not something new that we're approving because it's already approved in a sense. The
Yeah, when
zoning's
you would have
approved.
loved to have been notified was with the rezoning to allow maybe.
I would have just liked to known from
Yeah.
the beginning.
understand.
But regardless.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah.
Regardless, I was wondering, can I actually visually see a picture of what this is? Because we have, or I personally have gotten no information at all, and I've tried. I can't find it on a website. Do you have like a picture you can put up there? Because my concern is that, so Saddle, Chestnut, and Pacer are all directly across Joe
Yep.
Kerr on that opposite
Walk
corner.
it every day. I'm on your street.
Exactly. So we have all private roads. We have to maintain those private roads, and any extra traffic on those private roads is going, A, we would prefer not to have extra traffic, and B, it's more wear and tear over time. Everybody who drives in that area knows it is very difficult to turn left onto Marvin from Joe Kerr, which is probably why the DOT didn't want the entrance to the neighborhood on Marvin, because it's just hard to turn out there. So our concern, and there were other neighbors who were here earlier and they had to leave, is that my understanding is that the entrance is going to be there very close to Pacer. You were trying to describe it, and I can't even, so it's slightly up from
It's been
Pacer.
shifted to the left instead of right
Towards
across from
Marvin Road.
Pacer. It's been shifted to the left.
So we feel like with that location, it's going to take residents of that neighborhood about a week to figure out that it's much easier to drive up Pacer, take a right on Chestnut or a right on Saddle to turn left onto Marvin than it is to go up Joe Kerr and turn left onto Marvin. There's that curve there, people are going fast, and it's much easier farther down to take a left.
You're saying coming, I'm sorry.
Sorry,
My
so-
computer started talking to me in the middle of what you're saying, so I'm.
Excuse me, try again. Okay, so if you're going Joe Kerr towards Marvin.
Yes.
It's very hard to take that left onto Marvin Road there, especially
Right.
busy times of day.
Okay, yep.
So what people in that neighborhood are gonna figure out very quickly is it's much easier if you just cut through our neighborhood, get a little bit farther down Marvin, and then it's a
Right.
much easier left.
And
And technically, these are private roads they shouldn't be driving on, but we all know what happens. So the concern of everybody in the neighborhood, and there's multiple people who wanted to come but had prior obligations,
Yep.
is the developer, Marvin, is anyone going to do anything to deter multiple people using that road? Because it's gonna happen.
Okay.
So, can I interject really quickly?
Sure.
I understand the frustration of that intersection. I drive it all the time. Part of what this developer is doing is granting us an easement so that we can eventually put a roundabout in there. Unfortunately, that goes along with DOT's timeline. It's unfortunate, but it's when they want to get it done. But they're being very generous in terms of giving us a very large easement in order for us to get a roundabout there so that it will be much easier and people will hopefully stay off of your private roads. It's just a matter of time when that gets taken care of. And I do believe that the driveway entrance, I mean, I think that's dictated by DOT. It's not dictated by us. It's what's the safest. And unfortunately, if there's a cut through and people are using your neighborhood, I mean, I'm not sure what you can do to deter it except, I mean, I honestly don't know, and I know that that's gotta be a frustration for you, because I hate turning left onto Marvin Road, off of Joe Carr Road. But we know that it's an issue, and we are working diligently trying to get that roundabout put in way sooner than later.
So my response to that would be, we all know how the DOT works. People are gonna be driving on a road for 10 to 15 years before that circle goes in.
Trust me,
You know,
Absolutely, but again, where we are in this process is, this development has already been approved. And we're just trying to make sure that they're following crossing all their Ts, dotting all their Is.
well, is it within the purview of the council to ask that they, put a gate in, put a big, ask the developer to do something like that to deter people from using the roads
Put a gate where?
on Pacer?
I mean, that's a public road. That would be
Pacer's not a
like-
public road.
I'm sorry, I apologize. That's a private road. That would be
Yes.
like you coming on my property and just putting up a gate.
Sorry, say that again?
That would be like you coming on my property and just putting up a gate. Like,
I
we
think
can't
our
just-
neighbors would let the developer put up a gate. We wouldn't have a problem with that.
Well,
You would
Okay.
need 100% of your neighborhood to agree to a gate.
I very much believe they would.
Okay, I don't know. I mean, we went through this at
I
Firethorn
mean,
years
I
ago.
know quite a few, I can't say I know every single person, but I
But
don't.
Marvin currently doesn't allow gates.
No, can I?
On a
is that
private
correct?
road, they
Can I
do.
interject?
On a
Can I?
private road.
It's a private.
Listen, I'm with Kim. I travel that road and I completely understand your frustration and I'd be frustrated too. So all we can do from our side is, that is a private road and say, y'all figure out what you want to do with that.
So you
And
have no ability to ask the developer to do anything, because the developer's going to be making a lot of money putting those houses in.
I don't know what.
Hunter, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're well past that point of asking, I mean, we've already approved all this. We could ask them, but they're gonna come back and probably laugh at us.
Well,
So,
this is why people need, this greatly affects my house, but I live 2,000 feet away, so I wasn't notified.
Well, but,
You know,
But
Can I just clarify some
ahead.
things, please?
Yeah.
So a major subdivision is a by right use per our zoning ordinance, meaning if they meet the zoning ordinance requirement, They can do it. We can ask for things, but we cannot require them to do such thing. So to kind of, that's kind of different from that conditional rezoning that we just had, because that's a conditional rezoning.
Yeah, I understand that.
And so,
Yeah.
with that being said, yes, it can be asked of the applicant. It's up to their discretion to work that out. However, we can't require it. We can't require them to put in a gate on Pacer as part of this approval.
Well, I think our neighbors would appreciate it if the council would ask and, emphasize that they're putting, I think you said 261 extra car trips
That's
a
on a
day.
daily
And I
average
know
count.
they won't all be going left onto Marvin, but a decent percentage of them will.
So
in
if,
fair-
if, I'll do this. I will be happy to go to the developer if you can get me 100% of your neighbors who say that they will agree to allow the developer to put up a gate. And when you put up a gate, Hunter, if I'm not mistaken, it has to be on every ingress and egress.
So it'd be
to the
saddle
neighborhood.
as well.
Why would you have to put up one on every? Why do you need 3 gates? Why not, one would prevent thoroughfare. You see what I'm
So,
saying?
once again, to clarify too, as per our ordinance for a gated subdivision, it is only allowed for a single ingress egress type subdivision.
Oh, okay, so we wouldn't even allow that for what our current ordinance is.
If I also,
But I'll still do it. If you can get 100% of your neighbors to sign something that says that they'll allow a gate, I'll take it to the developer.
And maintain it. They would need to maintain it because it'd be on your private.
Well, they maintain it anyway, it's private anyway, so they're still gonna have to maintain it. I'll be happy, if you can get 100%, I'll be happy to take it to them.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that.
There are a lot of
In
legal
fairness,
requirements.
in fairness,
for
I'm just gonna
fire,
say,
EMT, police, you have to have
I'm just gonna say this in fairness.
Yes,
One of your neighbors was a former councilman. We have not seen him at all at any of
which
these.
shocks me.
Yeah, me too. He has not been to any of
I don't
these
know him
meetings.
personally, but I'll knock on his door.
Yeah, well,
And I
please
suspect
do.
he will be a
I mean,
fan
it's
of
like,
it.
and he was a former councilman that never has shown up to any of these meetings since he decided to not come to meetings when he was a councilman. So,
Well,
Okay, so we'll take, I'll be happy to take that back to the developer.
okay. I will go knock on doors and get signatures.
And we do
Perfect.
appreciate you coming in, and
Well, thank you for,
I'm with you on your concern.
I appreciate you doing the best you can.
in fairness, though, the really cool thing I thought was how much we're getting the land, and we also are on other committees. He sits on CRTPO, and we talk to county, and we designate areas. We got county to help fund a future roundabout that's going to be at Bonds Grove, and so that, by definition of the state, is a dangerous corner on Joe Carr and Marvin. So they've even said that they need more fatalities to get that higher up on the list.
Oh, good.
So that's what
And
we're
my
dealing.
daughter's gonna start driving in a
But
year.
that, in fairness, that's what we're dealing with.
Right.
If they don't see the safety issues there, it doesn't get priority. But that is a bad corner. People end up in those lots all the time in that
In that stretch right
field.
there, yeah.
Tearing up the thing. So it's still, it's got to be addressed, because now if this development goes in, cars are going to end up in someone's backyard, which is
Right.
not good either. So I foresee that being, and I'm hoping and praying that they see that as a serious
A reason to-
intersection. Where we can't even get them to slow, we change the speed from 45 to 35. They will not do that.
Oh, well, that would have
And
been,
that's a
I would
state.
have visited you next time.
That's
for
a
that.
state issue. We'd love your support on that.
If they have private roads, can they not petition a speed limit on their roads?
I feel like there's a sign posted somewhere that says like 20 miles an hour.
I understand, but if I had a private road, I'd put it at 5 miles an hour.
And ask the sheriff to enforce it?
Yes, exactly, the sheriff won't enforce it.
I know, I'm just trying,
So, I mean, there's no point, you can make it 2.5 miles an hour, but they're not gonna enforce it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
Okay.
so just in the essence of what the time issue that we have here, I don't think
Sure.
anyone else is going to be speaking, but this will also be, we'll close this public hearing.
Okay.
And then we'll take. Is he here?
Oh,
Okay, he
yeah.
had to leave, okay.
I'm sure there's.
So we'll go ahead, and close it, and then, since there's no one
Thank you, I
else.
appreciate it.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming. And then we will table the decision-making on this, I assume, right? For Thursday. So we'll need a motion to close this?
We can't make a decision on this one?
Well, we probably can, but I'm told we need to get out of this building, though. Or is that,
I'm
no?
sorry, I stepped out while you were talking. Are you trying to make is she trying to make a condition of approval to get the private gates?
No, she was just saying if I got signatures from all of our neighbors, that she would ask them.
She would
Okay,
ask.
but it's not a condition.
No.
But it's not a condition. I think you can go ahead and act on this.
All right, so we'll go ahead
So
and,
I'm gonna make a motion to approve the preliminary plat and construction.
we got to
documents
close the
stated-
public hearing first.
Oh, I'm gonna make a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Further discussion. All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Now, there you go, Kim.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion to approve the preliminary plat and construction documents for the Sage at Marvin subdivision contingent upon final village engineer review and approvals from all applicable outside agencies. And if they get 100% of the neighborhood, I'll take it to the developer to see if they'll put in a gate.
Sound good? Okay. Further discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Where do we go from here?
Unless y'all have, I have no village hall update, nothing in unfinished business. Unless y'all want to go ahead and make your appointment to the planning board without discussion.
Yes, yes, I'm gonna make a motion to, can we go to that one?
Sure.
Joe, open it up. Discuss and
What are we doing?
consider- Discuss and consider appointment of applicants to the planning board for unexpired terms expiring 3/1/26. I'm gonna make a motion to appoint John Jones to that position.
Further discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Christina, there's 2 items left, interlocal.
Definitely need an action on number 3. I'm not sure.
Okay, let's go to number 2. We're good on this. We've talked about this 1,000 times. I don't even know why we need to continue talking about this one.
So, opening up, discuss and consider entering interlocal agreement with Union County for funding of transportation improvements for the Waxaw Marvin Road and Bonds Grove Church roundabout, and allow manager to execute the agreement.
So moved.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Does
Aye.
anyone have any issues that you need to bring up on this particular topic?
No, real
Okay.
quick, this agreement's already been reviewed by Chaplain. You guys have already seen it. The only reason it was delayed is because Union County needed to approve it first.
All right,
Of course they did.
so Mayor Pro Tem, do you want to do the motion then?
I already did it. We moved it. We were all in favor. It's done.
Oh, I thought we. Number 3. Okay, we're on number 3 now. Okay, next up, we have discuss and consider entering an agreement with Russell Standard for a fog sealer allocation of roads identified in 2022 to 2029, Village of Marvin roadway plan for 2023 at a cost not to exceed $120,000 plus 10% contingency, and authorize the manager to execute the agreement.
So moved.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So open topics. No agenda. Review of action items. You want to go through that real
Okay,
quick?
real fast, we'll execute the agreement with Russell Standard for the fog seal, execute the interlocal agreement with Union County. I'll notify John that he's been appointed to the planning board again. We'll be bringing back the conditional rezoning at the work session. And that's all I got.
Okay. Any other add-ons? All right. Moving on. Review of Mayor Pro Kim list. Kim?
Nope, I'm good. I'm
Okay.
good. Move it on. Move it on.
Council comments. We'll start with Andy.
I'm good for comments for tonight.
Okay. Kim?
I missed you guys so much.
Enjoy your
No,
enjoy
I
the
don't
rest of
have anything.
vacation.
I'm
Thank
done
you.
with you people.
Wayne?
Just staff and law enforcement. Thank them.
Okay.
No comment.
And I will just make one comment, and I'm hearing this, so it's from a very good source. It's some sad news that we learned that
Commissioner Stoney Rushing had passed this afternoon, and our prayers and thoughts go out to him and his family at this time, this difficult time. So, and I didn't have anything else, and because we are rushed, I will ask for to close, and we'll look forward to opening up the meeting in the work session on Thursday. So I'll need a motion to close.
So moved.
All those, or adjourn, I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
I asked her, I said, do us one more favor, tell us what you would like. It's going to be metal post, metal.
You had to what?